Okay, and we should be good. We are live on Zoom session 4C. Whitney, Sluder, Bruce, Gilliam, Vernon, Beaver, and Jemal, Boone. Here we go.
Okay, so I'm going to go first. This is Vernon Beaver, peer reviewing Bruce on Artifact 4C on exceptional students. And first of all, Bruce, I thought you did a really, really good job. It was pretty cool to look at how obviously we all have this as an issue that we're trying to deal with and do a good job with. But it was kind of cool to see how your school kind of handled its exceptional children's program. And there were a few questions that I had pertaining to that. But on a basic level, the first thing I wanted to kind of get a better feeling for after reading your artifact was sort of how is your schedule built to handle, I don't know what you call it, enrichment or remediation or just review for some of your exceptional children. We've had a lot of problems with trying to figure out how we want to schedule that enrichment time. And I was wondering how you guys, is it built into your schedule? Is it more of is there a C&I type deal, or is it more of an inclusion deal? Kind of, what's your first line of defense against enrichment?
Well, our first line, two things happened to us as we dropped from a B school to a C school. We have something in the mornings from 8 o'clock, I think it's 8:06 to 8:36, it's called Eagle Acceleration. And what we did during that time is we did a lot of enrichment with all the kids. And exploratory teachers actually took, we had level 1, 2, 3, and 4 kids, and we broke them up and sent them to different places. For my group, I had a high-level group where we were doing vocabulary, we were reading to them, we were doing computer lab stuff where we were trying to help those kids grow. The teachers would take some of the lower kids with IEPs, and they would actually keep them in their classroom to help them. So yeah, it was kind of built in. In 6th grade, our IEPs students, they put them on an inclusion team, and they try to have inclusion teachers go into the classrooms to help those teachers. And our numbers were huge in the 6th grade.
Right. I noticed that in your artifact that your 6th graders, it seemed like they were a little more overwhelmed with IEPs and accommodations. Was there anything like obviously that was something that could be seen as far as the numbers? Was there anything done for 6th grade teachers to kind of help relieve the burden on that in terms of from the school?
It's kind of crazy. In 6th grade this year, we were non-compliant for a long time at the beginning of school with our IEP kids. And what happened is at the beginning of school, we have probably 5 or 6 feeder schools that come to our school, the kids. And they did not do a good job of letting our 6th grade teachers know that some of these kids have IEPs, and it slipped by them. And so we only had one teacher teaching about 40 kids, and we were not compliant for a long time. We finally figured out that we had made a mistake, and this was my interview with my EC administrator, and we tried to hire a couple of people to fit this need, and we dropped the ball on this completely. Our county office and our school. And so she was.
I saw that in your artifact where you were talking about non-compliant. So you're talking about students who were identified.
Were identified, but were not being served. And I don't know if you guys.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but after 20 days, the first 20 days of the school system in the state of North Carolina, they actually can hire a couple more teachers if your enrollments go up. Well, after that 20 days, you're kind of, you're not there. And so we couldn't hire a teacher to help our special our special ed lady, teach those kids. So they were teaching, she was teaching out of subject area a lot there for a while. And so we finally got back to where we needed to be. And it still was still a bad deal because of the elementary schools that feed us didn't do a good job. And my wife is the instructional coach, and she has actually put in a work day this year just for 6th grade IEPs. She's like, we can't miss the boat on this.
Wow.
Right.
You actually answered one of the questions I was going to ask you about the non-compliant students already. Let's talk about that EC team. So let's say you're on the 6th grade EC team. Those teachers, I'm assuming, are more, I guess, qualified to teach EC students. They have more experience with accommodations, or how does that exactly work? Who are those teachers?
They do. They actually have, they've had EC training, but what they've done in the past is going back to the non-compliance. They would actually have a couple of those teachers that would come into the classrooms to help the EC teachers or the EC team with tests. So it wasn't just math and English. Science and social studies teachers got help as well. But we actually saw a rise in discipline issues as well from these kids because of, there was just a lot of issues going on in our 6th grade. And our test scores will show that as well. But the teachers, to answer your question, the teachers are trained and they are on special teams, and they get to use inclusion teachers that get to come into their classrooms. I hope that's
okay.
A little bit.
It does. And it just, all right, so are the numbers like kept in a more manageable on that team? Is it like a smaller groups?
Absolutely. And then looking at those kids, I think we had 118, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was 118 kids across our school. I was actually looking at Jemal's where he only had 60, and I'm like, we doubled you up as far as those kind of kids. But it is tried to be manageable. I think we'll do a better job next year in making sure. We just hired a new assistant principal that is going to deal with special ed and testing a little bit more in depth, so we don't have the same problems that we went through this year. And those teams are going to be a little bit better. I don't know, for lack of a good word, they're going to be a little more updated with information. Looking at CUNE folders, being able to tell which kids need help, and and those kids making sure that they're on the right teams. It was a mess trying to get kids on to right teams after the year had started. So, I actually learned a lot from this myself.
That's what I was going to say. I always look at these artifacts as, what Gardner Webb wants us to learn from this. How is this going to help us to be better administrators? And when I looked at this one, I thought, with the legality and with the state and federal and local statutes that are in place, and how, we're obligated legally to provide services for exceptional children. I thought you did a good job of having a wherewithal of what those things were, identifying what those statutes were, what those laws were. And I thought you did a really good job of looking at your school and how it fits into those things in a candid way, kind of like what you were saying about being non-compliant for a while, and how I think as an administrator and ultimately as the head guy, I think it's important to know even what compliance is, whether your school is in compliance or not in compliance. What does it take to be where we need to be from a legal standpoint? Because obviously, the elephant in the room is always, if we don't serve these kids and we're legally obligated to do so, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, and no one wants that. So I think that's what this project was sort of about. and I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. I do too, Vernon. I actually look at it to say, what are they trying to get me to learn here? And it really helped me looking at our school to identify, the special needs kids and making sure, because that's a big component of our school. And I think ours are going to continue to grow and grow and grow with just the area that we live in. We're the 8th richest county in the state. We get, but our area and part of our county is there's some needy kids, and serving those is very important.
Right, and I noticed in your artifact that the numbers had gone up steadily, kind of over the 3 years that you put in there.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the trend we're looking for. It's like, I tell a lot of kids who right now at our high school, and go into special ed and math. You could get a job if you want to be a teacher. I mean, sometimes coaches, PE teachers, and social studies teachers, if you're a math teacher or special ed or English, you pretty much get a job anywhere in the state,
Definitely.
Because they definitely need.
Definitely. But those are the questions that I had for you, Bruce, and I thought you did a good job.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody want to go next? Hey, Vernon, I'll piggyback off him, or Jemal, I'll piggyback off him. And I noticed you guys had 60 students in your special population. How many total kids did you have at your school?
It's about 350, 355, yeah.
So 60 kids in special. How many per grade level? Is there one particular grade? I know we were looking.
The 8th grade has the most. Because when I was working on it, I had to go back and look at our testing plan actually, because I asked, because the EC teachers all going for the summer pretty much, and one of them is actually doing her internship next year, so she has really left the position, which we have to fill that position now. So I asked another member who's coming from the district, and she was like, well, I'm thinking it may be a 60, so I had to go back and look at our testing plan for our EOGs, and I'm counting, and I was like, okay, 8th grade actually had, I think, 22. And the other grades range between 16 and 18. So
how do you guys have, how do you guys handle instruction? Do y'all have an inclusion teacher that goes in to help them out? Are they on one team? I know with middle schools, I know it's easier, a little bit easier to group them instead of high school. And I know where Vernon's at. But middle school seems to be a little bit easier. Even when I was doing our master schedule, high school schedules can change a little bit as far as times, things like that. But our schedule is pretty much set, as far as like how much time we have. Do you guys have inclusion teachers?
So they have really, this year, last year actually, it took away the self-contained class for the students who had, the mild disabilities and things like that. So they have now all been streamlined mainstream rather, into regular education classes, which some of them may have had discipline issues, of course, behavior issues. And so imagine if you have been in a self-contained class all of your life, 12, 13 years of your life, and then you've been placed into a regular ed classroom with, let's say, 29 other students. Now, there were two resource teachers, one specialized in math and one specialized in English. So they had this schedule. They would go each grade level. And like you said, students all grouped together, which could pose a problem, I guess, instructionally. Yeah. But it's like two separate groups in itself. One group was really those who, did inclusion, who could stay in the classroom. The other group really was, inclusion, and also would report out. So it depends on, the schedule the teacher followed. And they would go into the reading and math classes.
Well, I thought you did a great job with your school. And like always, I always compare your school to mine. What about the kids with special accommodations? Now, like for me, I gave a test at the end of the year to a kid for 4 days in a row who got special accommodations. Do you guys do that as well? I mean, are they kind of pulled out? Y'all, how do y'all do testing with those kids?
We try to follow. We try to follow the law as possible. Yes, especially for those benchmarks for the district, especially for those in the state testing. They are really pulled out, given the extra time if they need it, and read aloud to. Now, they're, like, for instance, each grade, you have the high flyers class and you have the second tier class, and then it's like the last two classes, the EC children were kind of separated or grouped within, split between those two classes. So one class in itself may have had majority of them who had to be read aloud to. So sometimes you may have to use teacher discretion. Like, if I have 15 children who need to be read aloud and there are 30 children in here as a total, you might have to read the whole test. Depends on what it is.
Yeah. And I had to do that myself. Last question I got for you. Looking at your teachers, do your special ed teachers get planning time with your regular grade levels? Right. Or are the teachers separate? I mean, is there like we have an inclusion teacher for 6th grade. We have a couple inclusion teachers for 7th grade. We have a couple. Do they get the same planning with those teachers, or are they doing multiple grade levels?
The two resource teachers that we have, they work with each and every grade level. Wow. And they see these students, every day, or depending on what their IEP says. If it's 3 days a week, then of course, it'll be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It depends on what it is. But typically our planning times as a whole school, the common planning time was on Thursdays, where the instructional coaches would come in and plan with us. So you have the ELA and social studies instructional coach, he's planning with ELA and social studies teachers. And the math and science instructional coach is planning with math and science teachers. So the resource teachers will also be in that planning session as well. So they can
Did y'all have any kind of non-compliance at all during the year, or are you guys pretty much on board from the beginning? Because I know, like, your middle school and those 6th grades, I don't know how many schools feed yours, but I'm telling you, that's hard. I mean, that is really hard. Well, some schools are on top of it, and some schools are not. And it's kind of like going from middle school to high school. Those 9th graders, we're trying to make sure that, when they get there, that they've got everything they need.
Now, for some of them, a few students actually, we had to, as a 7th grade teacher, some of the students would tell you exactly what their accommodations are.
I got my own brush.
And they don't have any shame or discretion about it. They will tell you in their class that I'm not doing this test because I'm supposed to get read aloud to. I'm not taking this math test because I'm getting read aloud to. So some of them may have been overlooked, a couple of them. So we had to actually go back and ask the 6th grade team, such and such have an IEP last year. If so, what happened?
Yeah.
The parent comes out, we're like, okay, man, we're going to deal with it. So, and those may have been 1 or 2 students. But other than that, we have really been compliant. This year we've had EC teachers all year long versus last school year, where 3 of them retired in the same school year. They was dropping like, what's going on here?
I thought you did a good job, Jemal. I thought you really covered your bases. You covered all the descriptors. Your references were good. Everything was good. I thought you did an outstanding job on that paper.
Thank you. Whitney, I'll do yours. It's quite interesting, as always, when I'm reading yours and trying to compare it to mine, because in the art school, or performing arts, so just basically the arts and more so of a gifted program. Yeah. Now, there was one student you said that had an IP, and about 5 of them had 5 or 4 plans.
Right.
Now, and I started to think, as I read through it a couple of times, and I was thinking about the laws and stuff we were reading over. Now, is this a public school?
Yes.
So if it's a public school, I don't know whether you know the answer to this or not. Do you think that certain students who may be gifted in one of those areas, are they kind of not persuaded or not encouraged to apply to this particular school because they may have a plan, whether it's an IEP or a 504 plan?
It's not because of that reason per se, but when we do recruitment open houses, because basically, as I'm sure that y'all figured out by now, it's a performing and visual arts high school, 9 through 12. Anybody that lives in the Guilford County Schools district and lives, we have 2 art schools. We have ours and another one that serves like 6 or 7 schools in the district. So if you live in those districted zones, you have to apply for the other school. Likewise for us. So when we go to recruitment events, not only do we have to talk about how great our arts programs are, but we also have to tell kids that we have only honors and AP classes. Well, most kids that have an IEP are not taking honors level or AP level classes, or they will not be ready to do that when they get to 9th grade. So I think that automatically deters a lot of people. Now, with that being said, we don't say, oh, do you have an IEP? Oh, you do? Okay, forget it. We don't say that. But I think because our academic level is set so high that some people with IEPs are like, okay, there's probably not even a point in me applying there. Or they do apply. And see, before I, as an arts teacher, can see them audition, they go through a full academic review. Now, they're not required to turn in their IEP if they have one. They're required to turn in their grades and test scores throughout middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Of course, we have some people that turn everything in from kindergarten. But anyways, so they go through an academic review, and so we may have kids that are super gifted in the arts, but I may never get to audition them because they didn't pass the academic review. Okay. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
And some kids who are borderline like 1s and 2s on their EOGs, or if they've taken an EOC in middle school, then they'll go ahead and let them audition for their art area, which I have mixed feelings about because, like, for example, this year I had a wonderful student who was extremely, extremely gifted in dance and had 1s and 2s on his test scores, and they said, you really need to bring it up during your spring semester, and he didn't bring it up, and therefore he's not coming. So it's like, okay, well, we've gotten his hopes up because, Miss Sluder saw him dance and he was so fabulous and she wants to take him, and then now we're taking it away from him. Yeah. So yes, I do think that they're deterred, not because we say, oh, you have an IEP, forget it, but because we say, well, you have to be able to handle the academics. And you do, because that's part of for you to stay at Weaver, because it's a high school option.
Right.
You don't have to be there.
Right.
Part of it is you have to keep your grades up.
Now, for that one student and for the 504 plans, how are the accommodations and modifications executed within the school day?
Well, this year we have one EC teacher who was moved to part-time this past year, and it was very hard to, even with one child on an IEP, I know that maybe that would probably seem like a dream to some people to only have one child on an IEP, but it was very hard because we were having to pull our guidance one of our counselors, who's our 504 coordinator as well. We were having to pull her from her duties as a counselor to come and test him in a separate setting or read aloud or whatever kind of special accommodation he needed. Our EC teacher a lot of times in the past has gone into different classrooms with this particular child and just sat with him or would help just be an extra person in that class, but we didn't have that option this year. So it was very limited in what she could do. So we really just used her for accommodations for testing, both in the classroom when we could use her, and then we used her for like final exams. We used everybody for final exams.
Of course. And those kind of, I guess, big things kind of popped out. Because again, it's a gifted program. I was like, it's almost so much. Really.
And we're not slated to have her at all next year. We will not have an EC teacher at all. But we will still have a student with an IEP, and we will still have 4 students on 504s. So I've yet to figure out how we're going to get around that legally.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that.
So our principal basically said, where Weaver is located, it's downtown, and we're right across the street from one of our school district offices. And that happens to house the special education for the district office. So he said, we're going to call them every time we need a special ed teacher here. We're going to call across the street and ask them to send somebody over here. And maybe by then they'll get sick of it and assign somebody at least part-time. I don't know if that'll work, but we'll see.
But you did a great job. I enjoyed it. And again, I'm always comparing it, especially to our program as well. But great job.
Thanks.
All right, Whitney, you got 6 minutes and 50 seconds for Vernon. Okay. Or a little bit less, whatever you need.
Okay. All right. So, Vernon, I thought that your artifact was extremely thorough, very good. Some of the questions that I just had, because you teach at a high school and I teach at a high school, and I was just curious about the way that y'all do things. The app that you talked about that you got your school to get for the Chromebooks.
Yep, Fluency Tutor.
Did y'all just have the ability to add stuff on your computers? If you find something and you like it, you don't have to go through a process with your school district, or they don't have to approve things. Like, how does that work?
Well, I actually went through our media coordinator, who is kind of our /technical person on staff. So it really flows through her. We have a technological person for the county who comes and installs things onto our personal computers, or like our classroom computers and the Chromebooks. But the Chromebook, the person who's in charge of the mobile carts is our media specialist. And she was the person that I went to about the app. So it was kind of like she was telling me about an app that she knew about, and it made it, kind of okay to have those things put onto the computers. Now, one thing that turned out to be kind of really beneficial for us is, well, first of all, we had cutbacks on TA staff and in our EC department. Mm-hmm. The TA staff in the EC department was handling modifications. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if I had a regular ed classroom test this Friday, I would notify, our process was we would notify them within 2 days prior to the test, and they would set up the read aloud, separate setting, whatever the modifications were, extended time, whatever, what have you. And when we lost some of those TA positions, we lost the ability to do testing modifications on a broad scale. So it got to a point where teachers were having to kind of coordinate when their test days were, mm-hmm. because the TA that was in charge of doing modifications during that period could only do one test per period. Right. So the great thing about the app was that you could use the app to read the test. That mm-hmm. way the TA could be basically a facilitator, a person who could just hold the room, and you could have multiple EC students in the room taking multiple tests on Chromebooks or on desktop computers. But what we found worked even better than that was if we had business classrooms that, already have computers in them, mm-hmm. that had space. Like, let's say we've got a business class in our business department that has a classroom of 15 students, but they've got 20 computers in there. Mm-hmm. You could then coordinate your read alouds through the business department. Right. So instead of the way I envisioned it, the way I proposed it to our staff was that we could have one computer lab that was held by one TA from the EC department, and it would almost be like that would always be an option for students to take read alouds. That would accommodate read alouds, separate settings, mm-hmm. and extended time. Right.
Hey, Vernon, does all the kids have?
That's how that works out.
Does all the kids have Chromebooks?
They do not. But what we have is we have 3 mobile carts. Plus each department has a computer lab. Each core department.
And what was that app called?
It was called Fluency Tutor, and it's a Google app, and it's an add-on to Chrome. And that was the beauty of the thing, because I looked at a bunch of those. The beauty of it was,
that's awesome,
is that first of all, it's free. And because we are trying to be more of a Google school anyway with Chrome and shared folders, it was an easy add-on to a form that we were already kind of accustomed to and using, plus it was free. And when I looked at 2 or 3 of the read aloud type programs, it was really the best one. Like there's a bunch of different ones, and a lot of them cost money. I think one I looked at was on Microsoft has one too. But really the best one was Fluency Tutor. The only kind of caveat on any of these programs is how does it copy and paste? Like how does it format? So I don't know. It kind of depends on, and this was like kind of an issue with our staff because a lot of people on our staff are kind of less than tech savvy, I guess is a nice way of putting it. And when you start talking about formatting, it gets a little bit dicey. But by the end of the school year, it was working pretty good. So depending on how you make your test, let's say that you make your test with a test generator. Depending on who created that test generator will determine how it formats in the Fluency Tutor. Like some people could copy and paste the entire test in there. Some people had to copy and paste, kind of questions at a time. Some people made their own tests on different forms like Microsoft or on Google Slides or whatever it was, and it formatted perfectly. And some of the test generators like Pearson had a couple that you had to do question for question, which still, it's a little bit of a pain, but it's either that or the other alternative was I've got students who are ready to take a test and I don't have accommodations. I can't get to read aloud. So my options are wait till I have those accommodations, which could be, sometime next week. And now I'm putting more information that's not going to be tested on when they eventually do take the test. Or when they do take the test, the students who don't have accommodations are not being pulled out. So you're moving ahead with the students